The first time I realized my marriage was over, my wife wasn't screaming at me, packing her bags, or asking for a divorce. She was sitting in a lawyer's office, quietly adding my younger brother's name to the deed of the house I'd spent 18 years paying for. If family means something to you, subscribe. Stories like this happen more often than people admit. I didn't discover it because someone confessed. I found out because of an email that wasn't even meant for me. 3 months earlier, life had seemed almost boring. I owned a small commercial roofing company outside Columbus, Ohio. We weren't one of those giant corporations with hundreds of employees. We had 23 people, most of whom had worked with me for years. I knew their wives' names, their kids' birthdays, and which ones always asked for Friday afternoons off during baseball season. Business was steady. The mortgage on our house was nearly paid off. For the first time in years, I thought things were finally getting easier. My wife, Emily, had recently started handling more of our family paperwork. She said I spent too much time at work and too little paying attention to insurance renewals, tax notices, and mortgage statements. Honestly, she wasn't wrong. I'd come home exhausted, eat dinner, answer a few work calls, and fall asleep on the couch more nights than I wanted to admit. So when she said she'd organize our paperwork, I thanked her. It felt like one less thing to worry about. My younger brother, Ryan, had also become more involved in our lives. Ryan was 6 years younger than me. Growing up, I'd always been the responsible one. He was the dreamer. The kind of guy who changed careers every few years because he was always convinced the next opportunity would finally be the one. He wasn't a bad person, just impulsive. After our father passed away, I tried harder to keep the family together. Ryan came over for dinner almost every Sunday. Emily always insisted he stay longer. She'd make his favorite dessert. Sometimes they'd still be talking in the kitchen after I'd gone upstairs to answer emails. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my wife. He was my brother. A few weeks before everything collapsed, Emily mentioned wanting to update some legal paperwork. Nothing major. She said it was smart for married couples to review documents every few years. I agreed. She scheduled the appointment herself. The night before, she told me not to worry about taking time off work because she'd already gathered everything the attorney needed. I remember laughing. "You're making my life way too easy," she smiled. "You deserve easy for once." The next morning, one of our biggest commercial clients called before sunrise. A warehouse roof had partially collapsed after a storm. It was the kind of emergency that could cost us a contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I called Emily while driving. "I'm sorry, I can't make the appointment." "No problem," she said almost immediately. "We'll just reschedule." I apologized twice. She sounded unusually relaxed. "Focus on work," she said. "I'll take care of everything else." At the time, those words sounded comforting. Now, I hear them differently. About 6 weeks later, I was sitting in my office eating a cold sandwich when my phone buzzed. The sender's name didn't mean anything to me. It was a local title company. The subject line read, "Updated ownership documents." I assumed it was spam. Then I noticed my home address in the preview. I opened the email. There was only one sentence. "Please find the corrected copy attached after the requested revisions." I frowned. Requested by whom? I downloaded the PDF. At first glance, everything looked normal. Our address, the legal description of the property, county information. Then my eyes stopped. Owner 1, Michael Carter. Owner 2, Emily Carter. Owner 3, Ryan Carter. I read it again, then again. I actually refreshed the document because I thought it had loaded incorrectly. Ryan's name was still there, my brother, on the deed, to my house, without anyone ever telling me. I reached for my phone to call Emily, then I stopped. Something felt wrong, not confusing, Not accidental. Wrong. Instead of calling her, I scrolled back to the top of the email. One line caught my attention. Per your meeting last month, all requested ownership changes have now been completed. Meeting. What meeting? I hadn't been there, and suddenly, for the first time in 18 years of marriage, I wondered what else had happened while I thought my wife was taking care of everything. I did not call Emily. I called the title company. The woman who answered introduced herself as Karen Holt. Her voice was polite and careful, the kind people use when they already suspect a conversation may become difficult. I received an ownership document for my house, I said. There's a name on it that shouldn't be there. She asked for the property address and placed me on hold. While I waited, I opened the PDF again. Ryan's name appeared 3 times, once on the first page, once beneath the legal description, and once beside a signature line marked acknowledged by authorized representative. My name was typed beneath it, but I had never signed anything. Karen returned. Mr. Carter, I can confirm that revised documents were submitted through the attorney's office. Which attorney? I'm not sure I'm allowed to provide. It's my house. A pause. Yes, sir. The request came from Holloway and Price. I wrote the name on the back of an invoice. Who attended the meeting? I only see the submitting contact. Who? Emily Carter. I expected that answer. The next one was worse. There's also a note here, Karen continued. It says the ownership change was requested as part of a family asset protection plan. Asset protection from what? I'm sorry, sir. I wouldn't know. Did anyone verify my consent? The attorney's office certified that all parties had authorized the revision. My hand tightened around the pen. I did not authorize it. Karen became quieter. Then you should contact the attorney immediately. Was the filing already recorded? Yes. That word changed the situation. This was not a draft, not a conversation, not a mistake waiting to be corrected. The deed had been filed. Ryan's name was legally attached to my property. I thanked her, saved the email, and forwarded every document to my personal account. Then I changed the password. It was the first practical thing I did. It also gave me the first clue that Emily had expected me to remain unaware. The title company email had been sent to an old address connected to our mortgage paperwork. Emily normally monitored that account. The message had reached me only because the company had accidentally copied my business email. If they had not, I might never have seen it. I called Holloway and Price. The receptionist asked for my name, then became unusually formal. Mr. Holloway is unavailable. When will he be available? I can take a message. I'm calling about a deed recorded on my home without my permission. She stopped typing. I understand. No, I don't think you do. Another pause. Then she said, I'll have him return your call. I gave her 30 minutes. He never called. At 5, I left the office early. Emily's car was already in the driveway. Ryan's truck was parked behind it. That detail stayed with me. They were both there, together. Before I had told either of them what I knew, I stood beside my truck for a moment, looking through the front window. Emily was in the kitchen. Ryan leaned against the counter with a glass in his hand. Neither of them looked tense. That almost made it worse. When I entered, Emily smiled. You're home early. Ryan glanced at me, then at her. A small movement. Quick. But I noticed it. I finished early, I said. Emily walked toward the refrigerator. There's chicken in the oven. I'm not hungry. Ryan set down his glass. Well, I should probably head out. Stay, I said. He stopped. Emily kept her back to me. For dinner? Ryan asked. For a conversation. The kitchen became very still. I placed the printed deed on the table. Neither of them asked what it was. That told me they already knew. Emily looked at the paper but did not touch it. Where did you get that? Why is Ryan's name on our house? She exhaled slowly. Michael, let's not do this like an interrogation. Then answer the question. Ryan shifted his weight. Emily pulled out a chair and sat. It was part of a protection strategy. Protection from what? Business liability. I stared at her. My company is an LLC. The house is already protected under our insurance and ownership structure. You don't know that for certain. I built the company. And I spoke to an attorney. Without me. You canceled the appointment. You told me it would be rescheduled. I handled it. The phrase landed exactly as it had in the email. Handled it. What did Ryan have to do with protecting the house? Emily glanced at him. That was the first moment I knew they had rehearsed some version of this conversation. Ryan cleared his throat. It was temporary. Temporary ownership? Just until some of the company exposure settled. What exposure? He looked at Emily again. She answered. The warehouse claim. I almost laughed. The warehouse claim happened the morning of the appointment. Yes, and the documents were prepared before that. She did not respond. I pulled out the chair across from her. So try again. Emily folded her arms. You've been under pressure. I didn't want to add more. You added my brother to the deed of my house. Our house. Then why wasn't I part of the decision? Her expression hardened. Because every financial conversation with you becomes a lecture. Ryan looked down. There it was. Not an explanation, a justification. I turned toward him. Did you sign anything? He hesitated. Some documents. What documents? I don't remember all the names. You signed property documents and don't remember what they were called? Emily interrupted. He trusted me. I looked at her. That seems to be the theme. The oven timer went off. No one moved. Ryan finally said, Michael, I wasn't trying to take anything from you. Then why didn't you tell me? His silence lasted too long. Emily stood and switched off the oven. You're making this uglier than it is. No. I'm asking why my wife and brother changed the ownership of my house without telling me. You still own it. So do you. Yes. And now so does he. Ryan rubbed one hand over his face. I needed collateral. The words came quietly. Emily turned sharply. Ryan. But it was too late. I looked at him. Collateral for what? He did not answer. Emily stepped between us. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. Because he needed my house for a loan? It wasn't supposed to be permanent. What loan? Ryan stared at the floor. My business. You don't have a business. I was starting one. With what money? He looked at Emily. Again. Always Emily, she said. We were helping him. We? You would have said no. Yes. The honesty of my answer seemed to surprise her. I would have said no because you don't use someone's home as collateral without telling them. Ryan picked up his keys. I should go. I blocked the doorway. Did the loan close? He stopped. Emily answered for him. No. I turned toward her. Are you sure? Her face changed slightly. Not enough for Ryan to notice. Enough for me. I stepped aside and let him leave. His truck started a few seconds later. Emily remained near the oven, holding a dish towel she had not used. How much? I asked. There is no loan. That's not what I asked. She looked at me. Michael, how much did he need? She said nothing. Then my phone rang. It was Mr. Holloway. I answered on speaker. Mr. Carter, he said, I've reviewed the file. Emily's eyes fixed on the phone. I'd like to clarify something, he continued. Our office did not prepare a simple ownership update. My stomach tightened. What did you prepare? A transfer connected to a private lending agreement. Emily closed her eyes. I looked at her. Mr. Holloway continued. The property was pledged as security for a loan of $280,000. The room seemed to narrow around me. Has the money been released? Another pause. Yes. I watched Emily's hand tighten around the dish towel. Where did it go? Mr. Holloway answered carefully. To an account controlled by your brother. Emily whispered, Michael, let me explain. But I was no longer listening to her. I was looking at the deed again, at my name beneath a signature I had never made. And for the first time, I understood that the house was not the only thing they had taken. They had used my identity to do it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, because my mind kept returning to one sentence. The property was pledged as security for a private loan. I had spent nearly 20 years building that house. Every overtime shift, every canceled vacation, every weekend I spent on a roof instead of with my family. Now I couldn't answer one simple question. Was my home even safe anymore? At 6 the next morning, Emily was already gone. She had left a note on the kitchen counter. We both need time to calm down. Please don't make any decisions today. For the first time in our marriage, I ignored her advice. I made coffee, grabbed every document I could find, and drove straight to my attorney's office. His name was David Mercer. I'd known him for nearly 12 years. He handled contracts for my roofing company and had helped me when we bought the house. When I placed the deed and the loan paperwork on his desk, he didn't say anything for almost a minute. He simply read, then read again. Finally, he looked at me. Did you sign any of this? No. Did you authorize anyone to sign for you? No. Power of attorney? Never. He leaned back. Then we have a serious problem. How serious? Potential fraud. Those two words settled over the room. Potential fraud. Not misunderstanding. Not poor communication. Fraud. David asked me to reconstruct everything. The canceled appointment, the title company email, Ryan, the phone call with Mr. Holloway, Emily's explanation. He interrupted only once. When exactly did you first realize your brother's name had been added? Yesterday. And before yesterday? I had absolutely no idea. He nodded and opened his laptop. I want certified copies of everything filed with the county. Can we get them today? We can. By noon, we were sitting inside the county recorder's office. A clerk disappeared into the records room. She returned carrying a thin file. David spread the papers across the table. The first pages matched what I had already seen. Then he stopped. There. I followed his finger. A notarized affidavit. Below it, my signature. Or at least something that looked enough like it to fool someone who had never seen me sign before. I stared at it. The shape was similar. The letters were close. But it wasn't mine. I didn't write that. I know. How? He smiled slightly. Because I've watched you sign documents for over a decade. He pointed at one letter. You always connect the M and the C. The signature on the affidavit didn't. Such a tiny detail. But suddenly I realized something. Whoever had signed my name had copied it, not written it. David asked the clerk for one more document. The notary journal, she frowned. We'll need permission. I'll obtain it. Outside, David stopped walking. Michael. What? Don't contact Emily. I wasn't planning to. Don't contact Ryan either. Why? Because right now they don't know what we know. That sentence changed my thinking completely. Until then, I had wanted answers. Now I wanted evidence. We spent the rest of the afternoon building a timeline. Appointment, email, recording date, loan date, transfer date, every document, every signature, every phone call. Everything went into one folder. Then David noticed something neither of us had been looking for. The loan closed 3 weeks ago. So? The money didn't leave the lender's account immediately. What do you mean? He turned the page toward me. It sat in escrow. For how long? 12 days. I frowned. Why would anyone wait 12 days to release the money? He kept reading, then he became very quiet. There was an additional condition. What condition? The lender required one more signature before releasing the funds. I felt my stomach tighten. My signature? David slowly shook his head. No. He looked directly at me. Emily's. I blinked, but she already signed. Apparently, he tapped the document. She had to sign twice. I stared at the date beside her second signature. It was 3 days after our wedding anniversary, the same evening she had taken me to dinner, the same night she handed me an expensive watch, the same night she had looked across the table and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I suddenly remembered something else. After dinner, she had insisted on driving home herself. She told me to relax, to enjoy the evening. She even stopped for ice cream on the way. At the time, I thought she was being unusually affectionate. Now, I realized she had probably been celebrating something entirely different. David closed the file. I want bank records. I don't have access to Ryan's accounts. I'm not talking about Ryan. He looked at me carefully. I'm talking about Emily's. I frowned. She doesn't have $280,000. I'm not looking for 280. What are you looking for? He paused. Commission. The word landed harder than I expected. You think she got paid? I don't know. But people rarely risk this much for someone else's benefit. He slid the folder toward me. If she convinced Ryan this was about helping him, he let the sentence hang. It's possible they weren't trying to accomplish the same thing. For the second time in 2 days, everything I believed shifted. Maybe Ryan hadn't been the mastermind. Maybe he wasn't even the real target. Maybe someone else had been using both of us. And for the first time since opening that email, I wasn't trying to save my house anymore. I was trying to find out whether my wife had been planning this long before I ever missed that appointment. David obtained the bank records 2 days later. There was no commission, no payment from the lender, no transfer from Ryan. Nothing that looked like a reward for putting my house at risk. For a few minutes, that should have relieved me. It did not. It meant Emily had done all of this for another reason. David spread the statements across the conference table. Look here. He pointed to a series of transfers from our joint savings account. They were small enough to avoid attention. $8,000, $12,000, $6,500, always moved into the same private account. The account was in Emily's name only. How long has this been happening? I asked. 11 months. I counted the transfers twice. $74,000. $74,500. I looked toward the window. That account had been our emergency fund. Payroll problems, medical bills, a bad quarter at the company. The money we had promised never to touch without discussing it first. Where did it go after that? David turned over another page. To a debt management company. I frowned. Emily doesn't have debt. He did not answer. That was answer enough. What kind of debt? Credit cards, a personal loan, 2 cash advances. The room became very quiet. How much? Before payments, a little over $190,000. I actually laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because the number sounded impossible. Emily had always been the careful one. She compared grocery prices, returned clothes if they were not on sale, complained when I left lights on in empty rooms. How do you hide that much debt? Slowly. David slid a credit report toward me. Most of the accounts had been opened over the previous 4 years. Some used our home address. Others listed a post office box I did not recognize. One card had a balance of $38,000. Another showed repeated cash withdrawals. Then I saw charges from a place called Northline Recovery Services. What is that? David had already checked. Not debt recovery. He paused. It's a private company that processes payments for online gambling platforms. I stared at him. No. I verified the merchant codes. Emily doesn't gamble, and someone using her accounts does. The first reaction was denial, not because I trusted her anymore, because my memory refused to cooperate. Emily never went to casinos, never bought lottery tickets. She used to roll her eyes when Ryan talked about sports betting. Then I remembered the nights she sat at the kitchen counter with her phone tilted away from me. The quick screen changes when I walked into the room, the way she had started going to bed later. I had assumed she was reading. How much did she lose? We don't know yet. I looked at the loan documents again. The $280,000. David nodded slowly. May have been intended to cover the debt, but the money went to Ryan, into an account he controlled. That's not the same thing. No. He picked up his phone. We need to speak to him. I had spent 2 days avoiding Ryan because David told me not to alert anyone. Now the situation had changed. I called him from the office. He answered on the 4th ring. Michael. Where are you? A pause. At home. Stay there. What's going on? I need to see the account. What account? The one that received the loan. He became quiet. Emily told you? She told me almost nothing. Then you should talk to her. I'm talking to you. He exhaled. You're going to misunderstand. Then show me. David and I drove to Ryan's apartment. He opened the door wearing the same clothes I had seen him in 2 nights earlier. The place smelled like stale coffee. Cardboard boxes were stacked along one wall. You moving? I asked. No. He stepped aside. On the dining table were business plans, equipment catalogs, and bank printouts, so the business was real, at least part of it. Ryan sat across from us and opened his laptop. The loan money came in 3 weeks ago. I know. I used some of it. How much? $42,000. For what? Equipment deposits, licensing, a lease. He showed me invoices. They appeared legitimate. David photographed each one. That leaves more than $200,000, I said. Ryan looked toward the hallway. Emily moved it. My chest tightened. What do you mean, moved it? She said the lender required the funds to be placed temporarily in a reserve account. And you believed her? She handled the paperwork. The same phrase again, handled the paperwork. Where did she move it? Ryan rubbed both hands over his face. I don't know. You controlled the account. She had access. Why? Because she set it up. I stood. You let my wife control a loan secured by my house? His face hardened. You think I knew she forged your signature? Did you? No. Did you know I wasn't at the meeting? She said you approved everything. Did that sound like me? He looked away. No. That one word mattered. He had known something was wrong. Maybe not everything. Enough. David asked him to pull up the transaction history. Ryan signed in. The largest transfer had happened 9 days earlier, $206,000. Recipient, Cedar Grove Holdings, LLC. I had never heard of it. David searched the company registration on his phone. His expression changed. What? He turned the screen toward us. Cedar Grove Holdings had been created 5 months earlier. The registered agent was an attorney in Cincinnati. The managing member was not Emily. It was a man named Daniel Price. I looked at Ryan. Who is Daniel Price? He shook his head. I don't know. David did. Price, he said. As in Holloway and Price, the attorney's firm, the same office that had processed the deed. I called Mr. Holloway immediately. His assistant said he was unavailable. David took the phone from me. This is David Mercer. Tell Mr. Holloway that if he does not return this call in 10 minutes, I will contact the state bar and the county prosecutor. He hung up. The call came back in 4 minutes. Mr. Holloway sounded older than he had before. Mr. Mercer? Who is Daniel Price? Silence. Answer carefully, David said. He is my former partner. Former? He left the firm 3 months ago. Why? Another pause. Financial misconduct. I looked at the transfer again. Did Emily know him? I asked. Mr. Holloway did not answer immediately. Then he said, yes. The word changed the room. How? David asked. She was his client before she was ours. For what? I can't disclose privileged. She used your firm to forge a deed and move $200,000 into a company controlled by your former partner. Mr. Holloway's voice dropped. There is something you need to understand. We waited. Mrs. Carter did not come to us asking to help her brother-in-law. My hand tightened around the edge of the table. What did she ask? She said she needed to protect the house from you. I could hear Ryan breathing across from me. From me? She claimed you were hiding company debt and preparing to leave the marriage. That's a lie. I know that now. David leaned closer to the phone. What was the purpose of Cedar Grove Holdings? Mr. Holloway hesitated. Then he gave us the answer that opened a much larger problem. It was created to purchase your house after foreclosure. No one spoke. I looked at the loan balance, at the forged deed, at the transfer. Emily had not added Ryan to help him start a business. She had used his name to put debt against the house, then moved most of the money into a company connected to the attorney who designed the transaction. If the loan defaulted, Cedar Grove Holdings could acquire the property through a controlled sale. My wife had not been trying to save our home. She had been positioning someone else to take it. And according to the first payment schedule, the loan would be declared in default in 12 days. I drove home without saying much. David wanted me to come straight back to his office the next morning. We have enough to stop the foreclosure, he said, but that's not our biggest problem anymore. What is? We still don't know where the money went. He was right. The house could be protected. The forged deed could be challenged. The signatures could be examined. But $206,000 had disappeared into a company connected to a disgraced attorney. Money like that didn't simply vanish. Someone planned every step. When I pulled into the driveway, Emily's car was gone. Inside, the house felt strangely empty. The kitchen was spotless. The dishwasher was running. The television was off. If someone had walked in, they would have thought nothing unusual had happened. I walked upstairs. Our bedroom door was open. At first, nothing seemed different. Then I noticed the closet. Half of Emily's clothes were gone. The jewelry box sat open. The drawer where she kept passports and birth certificates was empty. She hadn't left in a panic. She had packed carefully. I opened the bedside table. Her old tablet was gone. Her external hard drive was gone. Even the spare house keys had disappeared. She hadn't just left. She had prepared for this. My phone vibrated. It was a text. Emily, please don't try to find me. I need a few days to think. I stared at the message. Then I forwarded it to David without replying. A minute later, he called. Good. I didn't answer. Don't. Why? Because now she's reacting. What does that mean? It means the plan changed. The next morning, we met with a forensic document examiner recommended by David. She spent less than 15 minutes comparing my driver's license signature with the documents filed at the recorder's office. Finally, she looked up. I can't give a final opinion until I complete the examination. But, she turned one of the pages toward me. This signature wasn't written naturally. David smiled slightly. You noticed it too. It looks traced. My stomach tightened. Traced? She nodded. Someone probably copied a genuine signature first. So they had one of mine. She looked at David. Most married couples have dozens. Mortgage papers, insurance forms, tax returns, bank documents. Emily had access to every signature I had written for almost 2 decades. As we left the office, David's phone rang. He answered immediately. After less than 30 seconds, he looked at me. We're going. Where? The lender. The vice president of the lending company met us personally. His face suggested he hadn't slept much either. I owe you an apology, Mr. Carter. You approved a loan against my home. We relied on documents certified by legal professionals. He slid another folder across the table. I think you should see this. Inside were copies of every email exchanged before the loan closed. David flipped through them, then stopped. So that's it. What? He handed me one page. It was an email from Emily. Attached was a financial statement, supposedly mine. It claimed my roofing company was about to fail, that I owed hundreds of thousands in unpaid taxes. That bankruptcy was likely. Every number was fake. Every page looked authentic. Someone had spent weeks creating them. The lender spoke quietly. She told us she was trying to save the family home before creditors seized it. I looked at him. And you believed her? Unfortunately. Why? He hesitated. Because she wasn't alone. I frowned. What do you mean? He opened another email. This one had come from Daniel Price, the former attorney. He had personally confirmed every document, every financial statement, every signature, everything. David leaned back. So they built an entire fictional version of Michael Carter. The lender nodded. One that justified the loan. Just as we were about to leave, a young employee hurried into the conference room. Sir, the vice president turned. What is it? She handed him a printout. I think this belongs to Mr. Carter. He looked at it, then handed it to me. It was a notification from the title monitoring service. Another filing request had been submitted. Time received, 9:14 that morning. Property, my house. Requested action, transfer of remaining ownership interest. I felt the blood drain from my face. They're trying again. The lender immediately stood. No. David took the paper. They're not trying. He looked directly at me. They think you still don't know. Within 20 minutes, we were back at the county recorder's office. The filing had not yet been finalized. David requested an emergency administrative hold. While the clerk processed the paperwork, another employee walked into the office holding a sealed envelope. Is someone here for Michael Carter? I am. She checked my ID before handing it over. There are additional documents that were submitted with today's request. I opened the envelope. Inside was a notarized letter. It stated that I had voluntarily agreed to transfer my remaining ownership interest to Emily as part of our divorce settlement. I almost laughed. Except, there was one problem. Emily had already filed for divorce. The petition had been submitted that same morning. I hadn't been served yet. She had filed first, and according to the documents in my hands. She expected the court to believe I had already agreed to give her the house. I was served with the divorce papers the following morning. Not at home. Not at my attorney's office. At my company. One of my project managers walked into my office holding a large, certified envelope. Mike, I think this is for you. 23 employees watched as I signed for it. Emily knew exactly where it would be delivered. She wanted everyone to see it. I closed the office door before opening the envelope. Inside were the divorce petition, a request for temporary possession of the marital home, and a sworn statement describing me as an irresponsible husband who had hidden financial problems from his family. By the time I reached the last page, I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of discovering another lie every day. David arrived 30 minutes later. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He asked one question. "Did you read everything?" "Twice." "Good." He placed another folder beside the divorce papers. "Our response is ready." "What changed?" "We're no longer defending you." I looked at him. "We're proving a pattern." That afternoon, the forensic examiner called. Her final report was complete. She didn't hesitate. "The signatures are not genuine." "You're certain?" "Yes." They were produced by tracing authentic samples. David thanked her and requested the written opinion immediately. That was one piece. The next piece came unexpectedly. Ryan called. "I need to see you." "Why?" "I found something." "Where are you?" "My apartment." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Ryan looked different. He hadn't shaved. There were unopened boxes on the floor. His business plans had disappeared from the table. Instead, there were folders, bank statements, emails, receipts. He pushed one folder toward me. "I've been going through everything." I opened it. The first document was a consulting agreement between Ryan Carter and Cedar Grove Holdings. Date signed 8 months earlier. I looked up. "You signed this?" "I don't remember." "What do you mean you don't remember?" "Emily brought it over one night." He rubbed his forehead. "She said investors needed proof I was serious about starting the business." "So you signed." I trusted her. I kept reading. The agreement wasn't about consulting. Buried in the middle was a clause giving Cedar Grove Holdings broad authority to arrange financing in Ryan's name. "I never read that page," Ryan whispered. "I know." Then he handed me something else. "This is why I called." It was a printed email from Emily, sent 7 months earlier. Subject: "Don't tell Michael yet." I felt my heartbeat slow. Not faster, slower. The email read, "If Mike finds out too early, he'll stop everything before we can fix it. Once the refinancing is done, I'll explain it to him. Right now, he just needs to keep working and bringing money into the company." Ryan looked at me. I believed her. I didn't answer. There are dozens more. There were. Some discussed debts, others discussed investors, some mentioned Daniel Price. Then one message caught my attention. Emily had written, "If the business keeps growing, Michael will never agree to sell the house. We'll have to force the timeline." I read it twice. Force the timeline. David, who had been silently reviewing another folder, looked up. "That sentence changes everything." "Why?" "Because this was never about protecting the house. It was about taking control before asking permission." 2 days later, we met with investigators hired by the lender. They weren't police officers. They specialized in financial fraud. One of them spread photographs across the table. Daniel Price, Emily, a man I had never seen before. They had been photographed entering the same office building several times over the previous year. "Who's the third man?" I asked. The investigator answered. "His name is Victor Salazar." "What does he do?" "He finances distressed real estate acquisitions." The room became silent. David slowly leaned forward. "So Cedar Grove wasn't buying houses?" The investigator nodded. It was identifying homeowners who could be manipulated into losing them. I stared at the photographs. Emily hadn't fallen into someone else's plan. She had become part of it. The hearing for temporary possession of the house lasted less than an hour. Emily arrived first. She looked confident, calm, as if she still believed her version of events would survive. When our case was called, David stood. "Your Honor, before addressing temporary possession, we ask permission to submit newly discovered evidence." The judge agreed. One by one, David presented the forged signatures, the forensic report, the false financial statements, the title transfers, the emails, the consulting agreement, the lender's investigation. The courtroom grew quieter with each document. Emily's attorney asked for a recess. The judge refused. Then David handed over one final exhibit, the email. "If Mike finds out too early, he'll stop everything." The judge read it carefully, then looked directly at Emily. "Mrs. Carter." She remained silent. "Were these emails written by you?" Her attorney whispered something. Emily finally answered, "Yes." It was the first completely honest answer I had heard from her in weeks. The judge closed the file. "The request for temporary possession is denied." Emily lowered her head. "The court also orders that no further transfers, loans, or encumbrances involving the property may occur until this litigation is concluded." For the first time since opening that mistaken email, I felt something change. Not relief, not victory, control. I finally had it back. The final hearing took place almost 11 months after I opened that email from the title company. By then, my life barely resembled the one I thought I'd built. Emily had moved into an apartment across town. Ryan had shut down the business before it ever really existed. Daniel Price had disappeared for a while before eventually being found through a civil investigation tied to several disputed real estate transactions. Our case became one piece of a much larger pattern, but I stopped following every headline. I had learned that letting the legal process do its work was healthier than living inside it every day. I wanted my life back. Not my old life. A new one. The courtroom felt different this time. There were no surprises left. Just documents, facts, timelines. The judge spent most of the morning reviewing evidence instead of listening to emotional arguments. That was exactly what David had hoped for. Emily testified first. She admitted moving money without telling me. She admitted opening accounts I didn't know existed. She admitted asking Ryan to sign documents without fully explaining them. But she continued insisting that everything had started as an attempt to protect the family. Then David asked one simple question. "When did you first contact Daniel Price?" She answered quietly. "About a year before the loan." He handed her an email. "Actually," she looked at it. "Almost 16 months. Another document. You discussed transferring ownership of the house 4 months before Michael missed the attorney appointment." She didn't answer. Another document. You created the private account before any alleged business risks existed. Silence. Finally, David asked the question that ended the illusion. So none of this began because of an emergency. Emily lowered her eyes. No. It began because you had already decided Michael couldn't be trusted with decisions about his own property. A long pause. Then she whispered, "Yes." It wasn't dramatic. No one gasped. No one shouted. But those 2 letters explained nearly everything. Ryan testified after her. He surprised everyone, including me. He didn't defend himself. "I was careless," he said. "I wanted to believe my sister-in-law because it was easier than asking difficult questions." He turned toward me. "I should have called you the day she first mentioned your house." I nodded once. "You should have." "I know." There wasn't much else to say. Some apologies don't repair a relationship. They simply acknowledge the truth. The judge issued the final orders 3 weeks later. Every forged document was declared invalid. The deed was restored. The fraudulent loan was removed from my property. The divorce was finalized. Because of the financial misconduct, the property division reflected what had actually happened, rather than what Emily had tried to create. My company remained mine. My home remained mine. Not because I won, because the documents finally matched the truth. About 6 months later, Ryan came to see me. Not at the house, at the office. He stood in the reception area holding a cardboard box. I found these while cleaning out storage. Inside were old family photographs. Dad teaching us how to fish, Mom laughing in the backyard, Ryan and I covered in paint while building a treehouse. He smiled sadly. I almost threw them away. I'm glad you didn't. Neither of us mentioned Emily. Neither of us mentioned the house. Some conversations don't need to happen twice. Before he left, he stopped at the door. I've been making monthly payments. For what? The legal costs you covered because of me. You don't have to. I know. He smiled. But I need to. That was the first decision he'd made entirely on his own in a very long time. It didn't erase what happened, but it gave us a place to begin. These days, my Sundays are quieter. The kitchen table is smaller because there's only one place set instead of 3. The house feels different too. Not emptier. Just honest. Sometimes people ask whether I regret trusting my wife. I don't. Trust wasn't my mistake. Ignoring small changes was. Letting someone else handle everything without staying involved was. Now I read every document before I sign it. I ask uncomfortable questions. I keep copies of everything. Not because I expect betrayal, because peace is easier to keep than it is to rebuild. A few weeks ago, I found the old family photo that used to sit on my desk. For a long time, I couldn't decide whether to throw it away. Instead, I placed it in a box with the rest of the old pictures. Not because I wanted to remember the lies, because I wanted to remember the man I was before them. He's the one who built the house, the company, the life. And after everything that happened, he's the one who built it again.